If you haven't paid any attention to your water heater in a few years, I have a couple of simple tips to help you avoid a future headache. Once you shut off the water heater at the control system, go ahead and shut off the gas and water as well. If you have an electric heater, you'll want to flip the breaker. In my case, I don't, so we'll skip that step. I then drain the water out of all the pipes by opening up a couple of faucets at the highest and lowest points of the house to clear out the entire system. Next, attach a hose to the heater drain and run it outside, or an inside drain, but if you have to do that, it might be a good idea to run it through a mesh or strainer or something like that in order to avoid sediments going through into your plumbing. You can see that the water is draining pretty slowly, and that's because the tank is still pretty well sealed. This is a good segue into the second tip of water heater maintenance, and that's to replace the anode rod every few years. Water heaters are made of metal, and typically metal and water don't mix well. That's why some really smart people decided to put an anode rod in the tank to attract the corrosive elements that might otherwise cause the system to break down. A good indicator that this needs to be changed is a rotten egg smell or moldy smell in your hot water. Replacing it is easy enough, but it does take some proper tools. You'll need a 1 1/16 socket and either an impact driver or some really strong muscles because these things can seize up after a few years. You can see here how long it took my impact driver to loosen it up. With the anode rod seal broken, you can see how much faster water starts to flow. Once it was out, I used some magnets to pull the old rod up and out of the tank. It kind of seems like a design flaw that I had to do this, but it worked just fine. You can see how the anode rod is covered in all sorts of gunk and looks like it's starting to get eaten away by all of those corrosive elements. If your water heater is close to the ceiling or in an otherwise tight spot, you might need to get creative here because it's a few feet long and you might not have the clearance to get it out. That's my case here, so I secured the rod about halfway out with locking pliers, and then I used a hacksaw to create a weak spot about halfway down. This made it easier for me to bend the rod and wriggle it out of place without smashing it into the tank or pipes too much. Now that the rod was out, the tank was pretty well drained, so I flushed it by turning the water on and off several times, letting it drain completely to get as much of that sediment out as possible. At this point, I drained some of it into a bucket so I could get a good idea of how much gunk was coming out. While I was doing that, I prepped the new anode rod, and you can see how this one is broken apart into sections, which makes it a lot easier to install and remove in the future. They're about $40 or $50 depending on the kind that you need, and you just install it with some plumber's tape and sealant the same way you took the old one out. With the new anode rod in and your tank completely flushed out of all that sediment, you can fill it back up with water, turn on the gas, and start it back up. I hope you found this video helpful, and it will maybe save you an expensive call to a plumber and hopefully extend the life of your water heater by several years. If you like this and want to see other DIY and woodworking videos like this, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the like button, leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and I'll see you all on the next one.